I hope you're having a nice day. So I'm Sirish, and today I'm going to be giving your front-end intro into web dev, and followed by me. So my buddy will be giving the web dev intro into backend. So let us begin. I'm not going to use any fancy terms to say what is web dev.
Excuse me, Shirish, 1 second. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Amit, are you recording the session?
Yeah, Sarthak will be recording the session. Sarthak, are you recording?
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Let's go ahead. So yeah, so as I was saying, what is web dev? So no fancy terms. I'm just going to say it in layman terms. It's all the work that goes into building a website, how it looks, what functionalities it has, basically the what's, the hows, and the whys. Okay, let us go into just see a basic understanding of how it works. So let's just say I wanted to know about chickens. So I will go to Google, put in chickens, and click on the search button. So it's not that simple. So as soon as I click search, it will send a request, and this request will go to the backend part. And after that, the correct data must be retrieved from the backend part and must be given to the front end. The front end combines it with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript so that it's presentable to the user. I hope you guys understood that. I'll just sum it up again. We just click on the Google search. It sends a request to the backend. The backend will be in detail described by Soham. After whatever happens in the backend, it will just serve the data up to the front end, and it will combine with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it will give it a presentable website which can be used by everyone. Okay. Next, difference between the front end and the backend. So I'll be telling the front end now. So let's start off with HTML. So what is HTML? So it is basically like the skeleton of the website. So what I mean by skeleton is the base framework. Like if you think of a cake, the first layer of the cake would be HTML. So HTML gives the basic structure of the website, the building block. And then we use something called HTML tags to write HTML code. HTML tags are very simple. They're very easily understandable. If you look at the black image on the right, you can see HTML tags like body, paragraph, H1, title. The names are very self-explanatory. So the body will house everything inside. H1 is basically the header tag, and H1 gives the size, and so on. Paragraph will house a paragraph, and it's very easy to understand. I'll be giving a hands-on demonstration soon, so just stay with me. Bear with me for a few more minutes. Okay, I hope you guys understood HTML, just a basic skeleton. Okay, I'll be moving on. So now what is CSS? So CSS is basically after the skeleton, after you make your skeleton, you cannot, what do you call it, present it to the user like that itself. It's kind of ugly. Let's be honest. So CSS is basically something we add to make our website beautiful, presentable, and make it very user-friendly. So CSS has its own syntax that is also very easy. I'll be demonstrating it soon. And CSS basically takes all the HTML tags, refers each one of them, and adds its style to that particular tag. Whatever I said now, if you didn't understand it, it's fine. It basically what it does is that it takes, suppose you have the body here, it takes the body and adds a background color to it. It takes the first heading, it adds a green color to it. So all the coloring, the font sizes, the way the website looks can be, what do you call it? Structured with the help of CSS. And that is basically CSS to beautify the website, make it presentable to the user. Please, so this is without CSS, this web page, and it's just built with basic HTML. It looks very plain, very odd to the user, but as soon as you add CSS, it looks more, it has that vibe. Your people would be ready to use it. So I hope you get the understand an idea of what CSS does. It basically just makes the website more presentable. Okay, I think that sums up CSS. And then we are moving on to JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is like, you can think of it like a coding language, but specifically, it is very specifically catered for websites in general. It's a scripting language. You can add specific functionalities to your website. Like you can make your website more dynamic with the help of JavaScript. The JavaScript is the last layer of your HTML web page, basically a web page. First, we start with HTML, then we go to CSS, then we make the website more dynamic with the help of JS. Okay, now this sums up basically what is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but I'd like to give you a hands-on demonstration of what this does. So just give me a moment. Is my screen visible, guys? Can anyone tell me if it's visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah.
Okay, so just give me a moment. So let us start off with HTML. So as I told, we will write the structure now. Just you can code along with me somewhere, or you can just look at it. It's completely fine. It's very easy. So let's start with the body. So the body tag basically houses everything inside your web page. Please put everything inside the body tag. Okay, that pretty much sums up the body tag. After that, I'm going to use something called a div. A div is basically like a container. Suppose I want to build a supermarket website. I will have different sections, right? Fruits, vegetables, poultry products, etc., etc. And then suppose if you want to make each section look different, I will use a container called div to maintain each part separately and design it according to my need. So I hope you guys understood div. Any doubt? I guess not. You feel free to stop me whenever you face any problems. Okay, now H1 tag. Now the H1 tag is the header tag. The header tag basically is used to represent the headings. So H1 tags goes up till H7. So like H1, H2, and they decrease in size as we go on. Now I'll be building a calculator today, a very simple calculator that performs the function of adding two numbers, just to represent the idea of how web pages can be designed. So I hope calculator came up on the screen. And yeah, I think that's it with the H1 tag. Now I will be needing inputs from the user to add two numbers, right? So I'll be using the input tag. See, all the names are very, user friendly. They represents their purpose. The name of the ID represents its purpose. Now, the input tag. Now, I will be using an access specifier, or I don't think that's the right term, but something called an ID. So an ID is used basically to access this particular input. Like if I have multiple inputs, how would I know which one to access, right? So this particular input, I'm going to give it as first. So it's basically later, if I want to style it in CSS, I would need to know this particular input, I need to style it. So that particular input's name is first. I hope you guys understood that. Then, yeah. Yeah, I did type something. Is it visible?
For me also, it's not visible.
Yeah, it's not visible. I think Sirish, you are just sharing the Chrome screen only.
Yeah, yeah. Is it visible now?
Just
Once you can, yeah, now it's visible.
Can you guys see this?
Yes,
Okay. Okay, fine. Shall we go ahead? Anything else?
you can go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So now same concept for the second input. I'll take input. I'll just copy paste it here, and I'll name it as second. So it creates another input box here. So I'll be using these input boxes later. Now, just to make this web page a little fancy, let's add an image here. So again, a very simple syntax. So image, type it, press tab, it automatically writes it for you here. So, and then in the image, I have to give the source of the image. I already have a source. So I'll just take the image source and I'll copy it and just put it in the source. And the image would have loaded. Yes. Can you guys see the image?
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, so that is the image tag. Now you could ask me what is this alt thing? So basically, if the image doesn't render, what developers do is that they give a description of the image. So suppose if this image hadn't rendered, a developer must know what it actually is, right? So it's basically like keeping track of what this image is in case it doesn't render. So since this is only for decoration purposes, I'll just leave it blank. Normally, people would describe the image and its source. Next, moving on, I would need a button. So again, very simple syntax, type button, and it creates a button for you. Next, next. I hope you guys remember what I said about ID. It's like used to access stuff. And then similarly, we have another thing used to access stuff called a class. So class also serves the same purpose. I'm just trying to demonstrate the idea here. So it is similar to an ID, but whenever as you move on and start learning web dev, they serve specific purposes in specific instances. So for now, a class is basically like an ID. Just think of it like an ID. They have their differences, but later on you'll get to know them. So it is used to later access them in either CSS or JavaScript based on whatever your need is. So I'm gonna name this class as button, very simple name, and then I'll make it as add me. Yeah. Did you guys see the button there? Hello.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. Now moving on. At last, I'll make another input to get whatever is added here into that, and I'll give it an ID called answer. There's something called output as well, but I'll not be using that today. Feel free to Google it later. But this format is very simple to understand. That's why I'm gonna use input to also give my output of adding two numbers. Okay, that's pretty much it, I guess. You have two inputs, one output, and one button. But I cannot give this to the user. It looks very ugly, to be honest. And then we have to make this a little more presentable, right? So let's make it a little more presentable with the help of CSS. So now, basically, we have the body tag, right? Now, if I wanted to add a background color, what I have to do is that the syntax is very simple. I'm going to just write it down here, right? Body and put brackets here. And then let's say you want to change the background color. Type background underscore color, not underscore, sorry, the dash color, and then give black. Okay. So that it's very simple. Like this, many properties are there. You won't remember all the properties, so just Google them out and just keep it next to you in the beginning. Slowly, as you start developing, you will remember the specific properties that you would need moving on. So this is basically the syntax, and a little more additions are there. I'm going to tell you a little more variants. Now, calculator went missing because the background is black. Now let's style calculator. Now calculator is in a h1 tag. Okay. Okay, let's just say I'm bound to run into this problem. Let's say I have two h1 tags and I want to style them differently. Like this h1 tag, I want to style it in a certain way. Let's say I have text here. This one I want to style it differently. This one I want to style it differently. What h1, if I just specify h1 once, how it will understand means it will take both h1s, whatever it is there, and it will style both of them in the same way. Like suppose, I'll just demonstrate it to you. Now let's just say text align center. Now let's just change the color. First, you guys can't see this, right? Let's make the color white. Okay. Now let's say I want to make the text align center. Okay, the syntax is very simple, as you guys can see. Now suppose I want to make this green and this white. Now I can't do it within the h1 tag. So what I'll do, I'll just remove this. No, what I'll do, I'll make this a class. See, this is used to access something specific, like, I don't know, fancy, I guess. If I give dot fancy, okay, the syntax for accessing a class is add a dot. That's it. Now see, it accesses only fancy and text is just left out. I hope you guys understood class now. So class is like a reference and it accesses only the class with that particular name. Any doubts? Okay, I hope you guys understood everything. Now the class here, what it did was that it just accessed the calculator, nothing else. The text, it wasn't accessed. Okay, done. Let's move on to the, the input. Now this, as you can see, doesn't look that great. So now, how do you access an ID? ID is accessed with the help of a hash. How class is accessed with the help of a dot, ID is accessed with the help of a hash. Now hash, what should I put here first? And in first, I will add whatever property I like. Like say, now there's this property called display block. Now what it will do is that it will take up this entire space here. This entire space, like within this region, extended to the end of the boundary is taken by this box alone. So it's very easy to manipulate with the help of this. So I'm going to display it as a block. Now there's something called margin property. So there's different properties within margin, like margin top, margin left, margin right. But if you don't want to, just put it into a particular place, say you want to put it into the middle, just press auto. I mean, like type auto. What it does is that it just calculates the entire screen space for you and just puts it bang in the middle. So you don't have to worry about calculating where is the middle exactly. I hope you guys understood that. And I know I don't like these corners to be sharp. Let's just say I wanted to make the border into a specific style. You use the border properties. The syntax is very simple again. Border, color, white. You can't see it now, but you'll slowly see it. Just give me a minute. Border, style, solid. And then border radius, 15 pixels. I hope, I hope you guys can see this. The border has become like this. Okay, now since the same concept will be used everywhere, I'm just going to copy paste it. Very simple. Now I hope you guys understood this. Just use the border properties and just do this. Now see, now the margin top will become useful. Margin top, 10 pixels. Yeah, that looks fine. Now I'll do the same for image. Okay, I didn't define a class for my image, so I have to define a class for it. Image. Dot image. Same thing. I'm going to use the same stuff here. And maybe add width and height. Since it's like too big and stuff, I'm going to add max width and max height. All these properties are available online. You can just have a look at them later. Now see, done. So I think that looks fine. Same thing goes for the button. Use the button class. There's a lot of copy pasting here. I got it. Okay. And then finally, the last one, the answer. Since this is an ID, I'll be using a hash. Don't forget that. Okay, I think this looks much better than the previous result. I think this looks fine. Now adding my functionality, I'll be using the JS. The syntax is very simple. Just add, you can just learn the syntax from online. Now, if I wanted to declare a function, just use the function add, then variable, then a equal to. Now see, this is very important, please pay attention. Now variable doesn't specify whether it's a number or something. So I want to take input as a number. So I'll put number document dot get element by ID. The syntax is very self-explanatory. I don't think I should explain it. It's very simple. First, it just gets the element by ID first. Dot value. It needs the value. So it just takes dot value. I'll use the same stuff. I'll put this in B. I'll put this as second. So I hope you guys understand. It just takes the second input. I hope the syntax is correct. I hope it works. And then I'll just define my function, what it does. C equal to A plus B. And then finally, I'm going to be using this again. Don't forget to change the IDs appropriately. Okay. Now, at last, we have to call this function. So go to button. The syntax is simple. On click equal to add. I hope this works. It will. Okay. I think I took care of everything. Okay, let's just test it. 1, 2, add. Oh, we ran into an error.
Use the ID of first as small f.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that. 1, 2. Yeah, it works. So this is like a basic demonstration of what HTML, CSS, and JavaScript can do together. I think that is it from my side. You can just code like this by yourself after the session. It's just really fun and really easy. So this is done. I'm done from the front end side. I will be passing it on to Soham. I hope you guys continue with your web dev journey. Okay, that's it from my side, guys. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, so is my screen visible and am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so just let's dive into the backend. So basically, backend is the main part of a dynamic website. It's basically where things are, it's basically where the main things are going on in a website. For example, you need to show some pages, you need to put some data into a database, or you need to do some other scripting works, which you cannot do in the client side, that is through in the front end side. So this all things would be happening in the backend. So let's dive in. Yeah, so basically the first thing that you can come across is client-server model. So basically Wikipedia says the client-server model is a distributed application structure that partitions tasks or workloads between the providers of a resource and service called servers and the servers request and call clients. So to make To make things short, basically you'd be having a server and you'd be having many clients. From a client, you can just request something to a server and the server will give something in its response. So basically this is how a normal backend works, that you would be having a server which will be serving pages and doing other functionalities, and you as a client would be giving some request to it and it will be giving some response. Now there are various ways to handle that response. I mean, there are things. So basically the Wave server is computer software that accepts requests via HTTP or HTTPS. These two are protocols. This is the most secured one. The last S stands for secured, and responds with the content of the resource or an error message. So this is how a basic backend works. Yeah. Now let's move on to HTTPS request methods. As I have just said, you'd be just putting a request. You are a client and you'd be just putting a request to the server. The server can verify your request. It can say, okay, this thing is authenticated, and we can serve you a response, or you can show you an error message. So basically, while giving the response, while giving the request, there are basically the main two types of request. It's a GET request and a POST request. So okay, so before that, something about HTTP. The Hypertext Transport Protocol is designed to enable communications between clients and server. HTTP works as a request response protocol between a client and server. The same thing that I have told. It's basically a protocol, I mean a set of rules of how you would be giving a request and taking a response. So the two most type of HTTP methods are GET and POST. There are many other type of methods, but these two are the most common ones, and this all from the basics, the bare basics of a backend structure. The GET method represents a representation, the GET method requests a representation of the specified resource. Request using GET should retrieve data. So through a GET request, okay, just let me explain it another way. Yeah. The GET requests a representation of specified resource. I mean, you would be giving a GET request and the server will in turn giving you a response. But one thing is that the GET requests are not secure. Anyone can view your data, whatever you have put in a form, or for example, whatever data you are giving. The data is visible all throughout. I mean, you can even check the URLs. The URLs would also be depicting that these are the data you have put in. On the other side, POST request is used to submit an entity to a specific resource, often causing a change in state or side effects on the server. POST requests are basically more secured. For example, you are putting a username or password, so that needs to be secured, and the additional security is being provided by this POST request. So we can have a few points regarding GET method and POST method. The same GET request can be cached, GET requests can be bookmarked, GET requests are not secure because data is exposed in a URL bar, GET requests have length restrictions, GET requests are more efficient and used more than POST. This is simply because they are much easier to use, and you don't need to verify those requests and need to do a lot of authentication, because GET request in itself is quite insecure and you don't need that. Now POST requests on the other side are never cached. POST requests cannot be bookmarked, are secured because data is not exposed, and yet have no restrictions on the data length, and are less efficient, sorry. Yeah. So enough of theory, let's dive into some practical work. Yeah. So this is a basic Flask server. Is the screen visible? My VS Code. Hello. Yeah. So let's not dive into this at the first place. Yeah. Flask form. Search localhost. Yeah, so this is basically a form. I hope you can see this. So, for example, we need to put our email address and our password. So let's put in some email address and some password, anything. So now you can see, yeah, it's working on a get method. You can see it here in the URL. It's visible. My email is soham this gmail.com and my password is asdf whatever. So you can see everything here. So this is how a get method works. You can see everything on the URL. You can even cache this, and it is visible and it's not secure. On the other side, if you just post it through a post method, let's change something in the backend, like something here, not here. Okay. So it was get, and I transformed the method into post. And now let's see what's the difference here. Like, I need to reload it. Let's put it anything. Password is not defined. Just a minute. Password. What happened? My pass. Okay, let's just put it off. For now, just put on this. Yeah, so you can see there is nothing visible in the URL bar. See, it's just form visible. So this is how a post method works. It's much more secured. So had it been get method, you could have seen here, okay, these things are, there would be something like name is equals, email is equals to soham@gmail.com and password will be something. So basically the crux of it is that a post method is much more secured, and for handling things like forms and all, you can just use a post method, and it's generally used. So, okay. So now, what's an API? So an API is basically an application programming interface for web servers or web browsers. And by API, I here strictly mean about web APIs, not any other APIs. So basically, what I was telling that you'd be sending some request and you'll be getting some response. So basically, the point in the server where we'll be sending the requests and we'll be getting a response is the API. So API would just be like, it would have an input through which you will be getting the request, and it will have an output through which you will be getting a reply, and in between it can do a lot of works. For example, you can store something in a database, you can do other types of works, maybe you need to change some UI of the interface, anything. So basically it's a point. Yeah. In simple terms, think of web API as something which is targeted for, excuse me.
But
Yeah. So in simple terms, think of web API as something that is targeted by the browser for a request and in turn receives a response. So it would be a response. It's not a request. Yeah. So like, for example, you can try this fake API. You can create your own API. For example, I'm creating a JSON like choose my name Soham. For example, some club good. Yeah. So basically, I have put a JSON form here. I mean, a JSON here, and I can retrieve this via this URL. For example, if I just paste it here, you see, it's the same thing that we have written here. And this is how a basic UI works, a basic API works. You'll be giving a request, for example, as soon as I put in the URL bar the address and I hit enter, it has given a request to that API and it's giving something in response. The response is the same JSON object that I have put in here. So this is how an API works. This is just an example. Now, moving forward, yeah. So you can create just your own APIs. For example, this is a sample Express backend, and this is a Python backend. For example, just you can use in Express, you can use a just get method here, and at this slash endpoint, you're just writing a function that is you're taking input as request, and you would be just giving output a response. For example, you're giving a response.send hello world. This is from JS backend, and you can do the same thing in Python. Okay, I'm not going to dive into any kind of backends today, so I'm just giving you an overview of how things actually work. So this is how. This is from the JS backend, like what we have written. Hello world. This is from the JS backend. Yeah, and this is from the Python backend. This is from Flask, a Python backend. So in different backend languages, you can create your own APIs, and this is how you could say this as okay, this is a minimal backend. You have an API, and you can serve pages or can serve functions in that. Okay. So this part was all of this API stuff, requests and APIs and all. Now let's move to a database. So basically, in layman terms, a database is an organized collection of structured information or data, typically stored electronically in a computer system. We work with data and we need to store the data. And it's not that for a particular session, what data we have stored. For example, you are creating an account, you'd be storing your username and your password. And the next time you'd be logging into the web page, you need to retrieve those username and passwords. So basically, you would be storing it in a database, which will keep the data secured and safe and can be reused the next time you are logging in or can doing anything with the data. So like here, a very popular database that's common nowadays is MongoDB. Like for example, I have this page. So this is a contact us form. I just filled it up. For example, it's my name, it's my Gmail account, it's my phone number, it's my address, and I just click on submit. So basically it's storing the data in a database, which we can retrieve it later. Like for example, we can apply the basic crude operations in a database. Like here you can see that I can find those things, like I have entered my name Soham this @gmail.com, phone number, address, everything. We can read this data, we can update this data at any time, and we can do a lot of the operations. The four more basics are crude: create, read, update, and delete. But it can be done in a much more secured manner. Just to show you an example, I can just show a live version of this website. Like I have it now. Yeah. Around 4,000, I guess. Yeah. So it's a very simple website. It is having a front end. Like here you can just give an advertisement. Okay, this is this, and anything like just a simple front end. And here let's see the process. Oops, what happened? Is there any problem? Contract 4,000. I don't know why it's not working. Okay, so anyway, I have posted the pictures there, how things are going on. Like as I have just mentioned that you can put in the form your data and we can just retrieve and do some operations inside the database, like as I've shown. Yeah. So that's all. We can combine all those things and we can create a fully fledged backend. And of course, with the front end part, we can create a fully fledged website. So that's it. Any questions?
So thank you, Soham. In case anyone has any doubts or some questions, they can ask. Or like in general, you can ask about all of the web development you have. If you think that uh, you didn't understand anything. I mean, I understand that you can't just go now and develop a website right now, but huh?
Yeah. Web development can't be learned in a single day, so it would require practice. So
Yes.
in case if you don't understand anything that we have discussed throughout the session, you're always free to ask and we can give answer to our utmost potentials. We are two beginners and we don't know everything about that. So
But like today you saw the what how basically everything works and how things are combined, what is backend, what is front end. So like in front end we have HTML, and to design that HTML you have your CSS. To put some brain in that particular website you have your JavaScript. So these three things combined make your front end of the app, which you basically see on your browsers and everything. Then let's say the backend is like you submitted a form. So when you click submit, then backend will be used there, and the details of your form will be stored in a database. So that's how all the five, six these components come together. And to do these things, you have a lot of things like Soham showed you backend using Python as well as JavaScript. So like this, you can have backend in these two languages, and then for front end you have like your basic these three things: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But we also have frameworks. Like there are two very famous frameworks that are React and Angular. So Angular is made by Google and React is made by Facebook. So these two are also very popular nowadays. So like if you want to make a website, you usually go like make with these two frameworks only because they are quite famous right now. So that's how everything works. Now I will actually request you to start doing web development because it's very important, to be honest. Just start from basic HTML and then learn CSS. But yeah, one thing is that if you think that how can I learn all the commands in CS and HTML, you don't have to learn everything. Like most of the time, you Google what you have to do, but in HTML and CSS case, but just know how basically these things work. So just start doing practice. There is a website known as W3 Schools. We will try to put up resources as well. So once you know basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, then learn a framework in front end, and then you can start backend. And slowly you will yourself you can learn it. We will also try to keep some other sessions in future. Maybe for React, we can keep a session. But for now, I will request everyone to start HTML and CSS at least, so that you get a better idea of how these things are combined together. So that's all from my side. If you have any other doubts or questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we can leave. Okay then. Thank you guys.
Thanks again.